And as always, just remember to mute and unmute yourself when it's your turn to talk. You can do that by pressing down on the space bar and hold it down the whole time you're talking.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending Executive Zoom. Today's date is May the 7th, 2020. So we'd like to have an approval of last month of April's minutes for executive. May I have a motion
to approve?
Anyone opposed? Any abstain?
No, I just had the minutes that were sent out, just had some weird like typos. So if those can just get corrected, that's it.
Who's going to correct them?
Well, I can tell you, hold on, what they are, and maybe Michelle can correct it. So basically,
Michelle, can you correct the typos, please? Yes, I see it. Thank you, Michelle.
Spell checking.
Yeah, it's just the weird thing.
It's probably my fault because I was the last one to make corrections and I did not use spell check. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Michael, can you put up the screen for the agenda?
Sure, hold on one second.
Did you take attendance with the minute?
Okay, so let's see who's here. Yeah. Alicia's here, Michael's here. Lisa Kaplan, are you in the house?
Yes, I'm muted.
Oh, there she is.
Thank you. Is Eric Diaz in the house? No, Eric. Is Michelle is here. Thank you, Michelle. Herman is here. Mr. Hewitt?
No.
Not yet. Anisha, are you in the house?
I'm here.
Thank you. May Lee, are you here?
No.
No, May Lee. Jackie, are you here?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Linda, I see you're here. Alex is here. Trevor, are you here? Trevor's here?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Paul, are you here?
I'm here.
Thank you. Okay, so far we're missing May Lee and we're missing Eric. That's it? Okay. So really quickly, I just want to thank everyone for coming to tonight's Zoom. I know it's a lot to have 2 Zoom meetings in a month, but as we needed to do this to make sure that we're keeping up with all the changes that are happening in the community, I'm going to have to add something to our agenda tonight. With your all permission, we need to do a resolution. I'm thinking because there has been an incident on the Lower East Side on Avenue D on Saturday. It was an incident with an officer from the PSA 4, Officer Garcia, used excessive force on a young man on Saturday. The details are really just unnecessary at the moment. I think it's just, for many of you, you've probably already seen it on social media. And it has been going around. I believe Carlina has called for a petition for us to get on board with for the removal of this officer. He has had several incidents on at the PSA 4 that the city has had to pay out a couple of, like, more than a lot. It's just been a lot of money. I don't know the exact amount, to be clear with you all. I just don't know the exact amount, but I know he's had more than several cases of excessive force. And it was just so graphic and so horrifying to see the way he took this young man down on Saturday, unnecessarily, I felt. But I mean, I do believe that we should sign on to a resolution or create a resolution for this. And I'd like to hear from all of you on what you're thinking about this, if you know anything about the incident, for those that have seen it on social media and also on the news.
Can I speak to the resolution?
Sure, Susan.
Have hands up.
Okay, so the resolution, so this came up, the reason it's coming up is because this came up at the Lower East Side Ready meeting today, and Carlina talked about it. And the resolution would be very specific and limited, and which is the only reason it's timely, because as Alicia said, she's creating the petition. The petition is to have Officer Garcia terminated immediately because of his history of eight incidents of excessive force. So that would be the whole resolution. And that's the only reason that we would be doing that at exec, is that it's a timely issue because of this resolution. Anything else might come up later, but right now the time issue is the resolution, is the petition.
All right, we've got one hand up with Michelle Cooper-Smith.
Okay.
I think, well, Susan sort of addressed my question, which is that I think that this is like a larger issue, obviously, because what the coverage said essentially is that there's no articulated guidelines for how police officers are supposed to be enforcing social distancing. And, you know, when you don't have rules, how do you hold them to it? So, but perhaps that's something that we can address at the transportation meeting next Tuesday.
You can't do that because it's not on the agenda. It would have to go on the June agenda.
Linda, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that there seems to be some differential enforcement of social distancing. You have a big crowd in the West Village, no problem. You have these 4 guys on Avenue D and they get beat up.
Absolutely. It's not just Avenue D, Linda. It's happening throughout the city, unfortunately.
So could I say that this resolution, that's a very big and very important issue. We're actually in most of CB3 having a lot of problems and complaints because social distancing in all these areas you're mentioning are not being enforced. But for this resolution, and that would be something that could be put on the agenda for June. And I believe, you know, many people in the city will be taking that up. But for this resolution, the only issue is to have this officer terminated because of his history of 8 incidents of excessive force. You know, he should not be, I'm going to say personally, I don't understand how someone with a history like that can be on the force. I did ask, because of a conversation I had with Paul, I asked Carlina if she could figure out why they were doing this enforcement outside of their jurisdiction in the 9th precinct. But again, that's not an issue for this.
All right, we've got hands up by Lisa Kaplan, Michelle Cooper-Smith, and May Lee. So let's go in that order. Lisa, Michelle, then May.
I just wanted to ask, when you say it's timely, it's because our name would be on that petition? Is that what we're asking?
Yes. Michelle?
Is this something that we could address at the next executive then, like a larger resolution, potentially?
Susan,
Wait, you're on, Susan. You're on mute.
It wouldn't be a timely issue. It's procedural, which is what Lisa was just addressing. There would be no reason not to have it on the June agenda.
But isn't it timely in the sense that people are getting beaten up in the meantime?
No, I don't think we're going to stop people from getting beaten up by voting in May instead of June. It really isn't a time procedurally. It doesn't give transparency. If it's not on the agenda, people can't come speak to it, which is the main reason for it, is to have transparency so the community can weigh in.
Right, but we're doing that tonight, aren't we?
So if you go to our policy, this is what it says. We have an exception for timely issues. Having our name in the petition is a timely issue. None of the other stuff has to be done in May and probably would be better done in June because we'll have more information. And it will be on the agenda and people can come speak to it.
Okay, thanks.
So May, and then Jackie, and then Alex, I saw you physically raise your hand. Does that mean you have a question? Okay. So May, Jackie, then Alex.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was late. But so there's a petition to be signed now, but, yeah, so what you're saying is there is a petition to be signed now and someone's asking us to sign a petition?
Carlina,
Okay,
she's creating the petition and it will address one issue, and that's immediate termination of an officer with a history of 8 complaints of excessive force.
8 complaints, I didn't know it was 8. Okay, so I think we could, and if we sign the petition, we have to vote on it.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, it is good to sign the petition, but it is also good to have it on the agenda of a future meeting because I believe that this is not the first time it will happen.
Yeah.
And it still needs to be addressed.
So before we go to Jackie and Alex, can I just ask one clarifying question? So do we have to create a resolution to agree to sign this petition, or do we just have to vote that we want to sign the petition?
You always have to have a resolution, but it can be a 1-sentence resolution.
Okay. Jackie?
So my question is that I understand Susan just said that the resolution will be focused on the 8 accidents at these offices involved in the past, but I just not sure, I don't understand why this particular incident on Avenue D should not be included, or it will be included.
It's not going to be on her petition. Her petition is her, it's her petition. And she said her petition, I suspect that the reason she's not including that incident is because they want the investigation and they want it to be very full and complete. But her petition right now that we're being asked that we can sign on to is to terminate this officer. There's going to be a lot more information coming out. And, that's what we have. I mean, that's what it is.
I see. I just feel like there should be a trigger for these resolutions that we are going to sign. I mean, these officers has 8 incidents in the past, but I just feel like there should be a trigger for a petition, for a resolution. That's it.
Could be in the whereas, couldn't it?
The trigger is the petition.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. Alex, and then Paul Rangel.
I just feel like if we're relying on the past incidents, I would need more information to understand whether or not I should be relying on them, because Susan said complaints, but complaints about officers happen in different ways. And then I would need to know, were they substantiated or unsubstantiated or partially substantiated complaints? And then as to what specifically, if they're lawsuits, which is what the press seemed to suggest, were they lawsuits that only involved him and had specific findings as to him? Because usually those lawsuits have like 30 cops in them. Some have findings, some don't, some have settlements. So I would need to know just what the history really is. They're all, and also settlements are sometimes settlements with no fault. And are they settlements for lawsuits that have other officers named? Because then he's just one person in a lawsuit.
I don't know.
And you have to understand what his individual responsibility was by actually reading the document.
We have none of that information. There were 8 settlements in which the city paid out money. That is the only information we have.
But almost every cop that works in a park and makes arrests in a park or in a housing development or is a warrants cop or is a narcotics cop has almost that many or more lawsuits. So I can't derive anything from the mere amount of lawsuits or from the fact that they're settled.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I hate to.
I think the incident that's recorded is sufficient for us to express concern about the officer and his capabilities.
But the issue is, the timely issue is signing on the petition. So you will vote to
Mhm.
sign on, vote not to sign on.
I understand.
Mr. Rangel? Paul?
There is a lot of information we don't know because everything is under investigation, so they're not going to say anything. I know they already did their outreach PSA 4 and that entire team to everybody, every elected official to say we're not saying anything, everything's under investigation. I understand what Alexandra was saying. But at the same time, I think it's perfectly good to sign on to this because there is some information out there about that everybody knows. And there's a jurisdictional issue here too, but that's not neither here nor there right now.
Okay, they also reached out to the community board.
Okay, so there's no other hands raised. So Alicia or Susan, or is one of you proposing language that we're voting on?
I can. Let's just, if anyone can jump in.
Okay.
To support Councilmember Rivera's petition to have Officer Garcia of PSA 4 immediately terminated due to his record of 8 incidents of excessive force.
And can we add the most recent incident?
That's still under investigation. There hasn't been a determination made yet. The others are, have been settled.
Okay.
Trevor's got his hand up. Trevor, go ahead.
Trevor.
Video.
Go ahead,
Yes.
Trevor, you're on mute.
If that is the only thing we're using, and that is the resolution, understanding the video and what happened this weekend, it's just difficult to not put that in there because if we could say that, then there could be 200 officers with 8 complaints against them that we might want to also follow. We're ignoring the elephant in the room, and that's the video of what happened. And I'm just wondering if it's smart for the resolution to be so confined to, we want to terminate this person because there are complaints against him.
Susan, go ahead.
So it's her petition. Her petition.
No, I understand that.
So
Our resolution.
The resolution has to be for a timely issue. The incident that just happened, first of all, you can't remove somebody for an incident that is under investigation. The others already happened and there were payouts. So that tells you something. The one that's currently under investigation, and I should mention Trevor was at this meeting also. The one that's currently under investigation cannot be a reason to fire him when it's still under investigation. We may emotionally all agree that, but legally you can't fire someone for something that's under investigation. And the timely issue, we can put all of that on the agenda. No one's saying that we can't.
Susan, I understand that. I get all that. I understand that. But I'm looking at what we are proposing, and we are proposing a resolution which says we want to fire somebody because they have 7 or 8 past complaints. Correct?
No. What we're passing is a resolution to support Carlina's petition to do that. Her petition doesn't include the current incident. What we're supporting.
No, I'm not talking about the current incident. I'm talking about what her petition says and comparing that to all the other officers on the force.
Do you have a copy of what her petition says?
Yeah, that might be helpful.
She's writing it as we speak.
Okay.
Trevor, I mean, did you hear anything different at the meeting, Trevor?
No, I didn't. But I think you're missing the point that I'm making, and I heard it at the meeting. And it's because I thought it was going to be a little more focused on the current actions. I understand why it cannot be, and I understand why her petition now will be narrowly focused. But we could take that same petition and apply it to a whole load of officers. And I'm just wondering if we need to put something in there in our resolution, regardless of whether her petition says something, so we're not just saying that any officer that has 7 or 8 complaints should be terminated. Maybe that should be the case, but that's what we're basically saying, even in supporting her petition.
That's a very good point. And what came up at the meeting, which is not being addressed in this petition and can't be addressed by us at this meeting, is whether an officer with a history of excessive force incidents should be on the force. But you're right, that's a whole different issue.
We've got a hand raised by May Lee. May, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, so I thought that we had the petition in front of us.
No, May, we can barely hear you. You might need to hold your microphone closer, depending on what you're using.
Oh, can you hear me now?
A little bit better, yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So I thought we had the petition in front of us. So if we don't.
No, we don't have the petition in front of us. According to Susan, the petition is still being drafted by Carlina's office. Susan, do you want to add to that?
I'm going to say, based on everything, all the points people are making, we could probably do this at the next exec and still get on the petition.
I would agree with that. That's what I was going to suggest. I think we need to table this until we actually know what the petition says.
That makes sense. Okay. So we all agree that we're going to table this until the next exec.
Well, that's what Alex has a question. So,
Well, or a request, if we can ask this of Carlina's office, because it's clear that if they have seen the settlement amounts for the settlements, that they, you know, have public records of the lawsuits. If they could give us more information about what his specific conduct was that in the charged lawsuits, and whether or not they applied to him individually or him in a group of other officers, then to know what his specific conduct was would be helpful, as opposed to excessive force lawsuits, because again, they usually name multiple people. A lot of them get settled without even being served on the officers, and you need to know what the specific conduct is that they're being alleged to have done. It would be helpful to understand, you know, what we're asking him to be terminated for, if we have more specific information, if they're able to supply it to us. And that's all public records. So it seems like, based on what I've heard, somebody's seen some or all of it to be able to make some, you know, provide us with some sort of conclusions about it.
so we have a hand raised by Paul, so we'll go to him next, but there's also a comment in the chat box from Lisa saying that she concurs with what Alex just said. Go ahead, Paul.
Lawsuits are public record. There's a website that you can see those lawsuits, not just some made up website, that you can see the settlements. And I think most of the lawsuits are him and one other cop, from what I understand. But I'll let the electeds and whoever is, and Carlina was writing up that petition, I'm sure they'll have that information, hopefully, in that petition.
Susan?
Can we just, I mean, like Paul, you've been on the website. Can you just copy the stuff?
There are two. There's a state one and there's a federal one. So there are two different ones.
Are they all, if they're all public, can we just look them up and get copies of the stuff?
Can we just have that ready for the next exec?
But we have to say who's doing it.
Okay.
And I'm asking if it's public record, if anyone can do it.
Susan, Paul, can I ask you to do that for us, please?
Sure, I'll track it down.
Are you talking about Pacers, Paul?
I'm sorry, you were breaking up.
Are you talking about Pacers when you're talking about the public website?
I was looking through one of the websites that has all the lawsuits, but I'll try to get a more specific website that I usually track.
Pacers is the state one. I don't get the federal ones in my line of work. I don't get them myself. Somebody does that in my office. But I think if you search his name, the federal lawsuits are just supposed to pop up, like under Google.
Yeah, no, that's usually what you can do. I think it's called CopStat, the website, but I'll track it down before the next exec. But thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna move in. So I wanna welcome the new members. They've been appointed. We have, if everyone is ready to hear who the new members are. Okay, Wendy Lee, Troy Velez, Ricky Wong, David Louise, Andrea Gardillo, and Tyreek Ramos. So they are newly appointed members and they will be receiving committee request forms from me soon. They will need mentors to help usher them in. So please suggest someone if possible, if any of you are available to do that. I know that May Lee is still mentoring Mr. Thomas Rosa. So I'm gonna ask that executive board please step up and mentor. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. So if you can lend a helping hand in mentoring anyone, let me know. I think that Ricky Wong, we're going to ask that Heidi met him, Heidi knows him, so I'm going to ask Heidi to mentor him. If anyone else, I think Wendy, I think Jackie, you know Wendy, right?
Jackie has his hand up, so I believe he does.
Yes,
but-
yes.
Can you mentor her?
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. So Jackie has been assigned to Wendy. Heidi's gonna be, I'm gonna ask Heidi to have Ricky. I need someone to have Troy and David, Andrea, and Tyreek Ramos.
All right, Alicia. So Eric Diaz in the chat is saying that he knows both Tariq and Andrea, so he can speak with them to ask them, I guess, if he wants to, if they want him to mentor him.
Well, are you gonna say that you're gonna mentor both of them, Eric?
Sure.
Okay.
And I know Troy. I mean, I don't know if I know enough to be his mentor, but I know Troy from park stuff because his park is right next to my park. And so we do a lot of stuff together. So I'm happy to take him on too.
Okay, so Michael will mentor Troy. Thank you, Michael. And I need one more for David Luis. One more. Come on, come on. Come on, exec. Somebody has to help because they don't know. A lot of them, they're new, they have never attended a community. Some of them have, but many of them still don't know the voting. Hands, any hands?
Susan's got it.
Michael, any hands?
I just want, I'm not mentoring. I just want to put David into context. He is a business person in Chinatown. He has an insurance company in Chinatown. I assume he's going to be interested in economic development, and his family has been very active in Chinatown for years.
Jackie's got his hand up also. Jackie, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to say I know David Lewis' family pretty well. His father is a close friend, so since I'm going to brief Wendy about what's going on with community board, maybe I can talk to David at the same time. Just make it easier for everyone.
Okay, very good. So Jackie, you have now David and Wendy. So everybody is covered.
Right.
Thank you so very much, everyone. Thank you for those that stepped up to the plate. Okay. I don't have anything other than, well, everything else I have to say is going to be covered later on in the agenda. Okay, let's go on to the next agenda item.
That's me.
Report.
Yeah, I don't really have much to report, to be honest with you. Still dealing with all the technology and Zoom stuff for our meetings. So just bear with me as we still figure things out on here. And I think that's really about it for me.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Lisa?
Feel like there's anything I need to report to the whole group. I sent in a new format for attendance taking, but I don't really think it deserves everyone's time.
Okay. Thank you, Lisa. All right, so now we're going to go on to the treasurer's report.
Herman is with us now.
Mr. Hewitt?
Nothing at this time. I think after all this stuff, I will catch up with some of the stuff with Susan later.
Okay.
But
Okay.
no, that's
All right,
about
Mr.
it.
Hughes. Okay. All right. Susan, district manager's report.
Okay, first on public members, I contacted all the chairs to see if they wanted their public members to get reapplications. They all said yes. They all went out. The first one came back and they're all due by next Friday. So by next Friday, we'll know if all the public members want to stay on. We have 2 subcommittees without chairs. One is not has never been an active subcommittee. One is the NYCHA one, which has 1 public member. I did not contact that person because I don't know when that's going to be activated, and would like direction from the exec on that. And the other one is the Chinatown neighborhood, which I can't imagine meeting anytime soon. And I was wondering if we should send a letter to the public members saying that we will be in touch with them when the committee is reactivated. But I wanted direction from the exec on both of those.
Well, I think it's important for us to stay in communication with the public members. So I do agree that we should definitely send out a letter of communication, just letting them know when we resolve or regain the committee again, that we would definitely like to have them on board. So yes, and I do know, I think the other public member for the NYCHA Section 8 was Camille Napoleon, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we should definitely send her a letter just letting her know the same thing as well, that, you know, the committee is not dissolved, but it is not active at the moment. Okay?
I will do that. I will do
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Okay, so
Alicia, would it be possible if they could be active on one of the committees, like the housing authority could participate temporarily in the housing and the other person on another committee in the meantime?
You to add her to land use?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Herman's proposing is that if the subcommittee members start attending the committee that the subcommittee falls under.
Yes.
that would,
What do you all think about that? Because I think some of the committees are quite full.
they all report to land use, which is a huge committee.
Yeah.
Actually, on that issue, can I think about it and report back to you guys on the next executive committee? Because what happened with land use is that I lost Nancy Ortiz 2 months ago, and because and to represent NYCHA in the land use committee right now, I only have Damaris left. So I just need a little bit of time to think about whether we should just bring the NYCHA subcommittee into attending the land use committee. Would that be more productive to both land use and NYCHA? So just give me a little bit of time to think about it.
Could I also mention that several of the new members live in NYCHA, and generally what we do is appoint the new public members to a committee after the new members get on, so we see what's needed on each committee. It's just generally that's what our timeline is.
Thank you.
So go on to next. I'm assuming, or I would like the exec to make a decision about June meetings now, because we really need to plan ahead for that. I'm assuming that we'll go back to all the committees meeting in June, because we talked about putting district needs on that. And I'm assuming that they will be on Zoom unless the executive order changes. but I would like the committee to confirm that. And then I've also been asked whether we are going to go back. For a while, the exec had said that we were only dealing with agenda items that needed a resolution. In June, are we going to be going back to regular agendas, or is there going to be some limitations? What do we want to do for June agenda? Just in general, not specifics. We are already having people ask to be put on the agenda, which is what is coming up.
Trevor, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to follow up with Susan because we've obviously had a few folks that want to put some items on to parks, which don't necessarily require a timely vote or a city decision. So I'm curious to hear other members as to how we're going to handle this and whether we're going to take the full load of agenda items that we were taking before the pandemic, assuming we're going to be on Zoom too.
Yeah, I mean, I would, from my perspective, this actually brings up something that I should have talked about it during my first chair report, and that, you know, right now, myself and Clint are really the two that are well-versed with Zoom. Linda may be taking over as well after her meeting next week. So my hope is that, you know, for the next meetings coming up for each of the committees, I will make the chair a co-host so that they can see what the functionality is. But I'm hopeful that eventually the chairs can take over running the technical side of their meetings so that I don't have to spend every evening of my life on a community board Zoom, especially if we're going to go back to every committee meeting in June. But I would, to comment on what Trevor said, I mean, I don't see a reason why we can't start bringing some non-vote matters to the June agenda, but I would want to also limit it so that we're not having an agenda that's, you know, 8 items long and 8 presentations going over Zoom, which is, you know, as effective as it is, it's not the most optimal way to be meeting, especially when we're being given a slideshow presentation by a city agency. So I would propose that if we do take non-vote items on the agenda, that we limit it maybe to 2 or 3 non-vote items.
I agree.
I would ask for some criteria to choose those.
I mean, I would say it's probably up to the chair.
Yeah, for each committee, I mean, it's totally up to you guys. We're putting it back to you as to what it is that you would like to do, because you're the ones that have to deal with it. And Zoom, you know, someone definitely has to be sitting behind and regulating people's watching who's raising their hands, who has questions, reading the dashboard. So, I mean, I think that this is all stuff that you have to consider when you know, make your decision. If you, yeah, go ahead,
Sorry,
Mike.
if I may.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
May, I can hardly hear you.
Oh, so can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
better.
Okay, so I guess I'm saying for my committee, I would prefer that we don't have non-vote items unless the information we are getting is somehow related to our district needs, which is, you know, for us we have a lot on that. But if it's just people who want to make presentations about stuff, I would rather wait. So it depends what it is. So I would, you know, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay.
But if it's related to district needs and will help to inform us, and they have to come and give us, and then the only ways for them to come and give us a presentation, then I would do it.
Okay.
Okay, so basically to confirm what I'm hearing is that unless something changes with the executive order, we will be having meetings in June on Zoom, and non-resolution items will be decided on by the committee chairs.
And we've got, I believe that's what everyone's saying, but there's 2 hands up. First is Alex and then Trevor.
Well, I will say that, you know, having had a meeting in the past month, although it only had 3 agenda items, I do have Clint on my committee, so I already have the benefit of him being the person who operates everything. But if it's helpful for everybody, what we did was we just scheduled a Zoom meeting the Friday before, and we did like a mock Zoom meeting where we tried to figure out where we would speak, when the applicants would speak, how Clint would call on them, how I would convey information, and when we would actually get to the making of a resolution. And since we had that, defined for us when we then had the meeting on Monday, it was very helpful.
Thanks, Alex. Trevor?
The only thing I would say is, and I understand the need to pull in items, is that do we need to have consensus on this as committee chairs? Because there might be some folks saying, well, they heard my item at one committee and it wasn't a vote or didn't need a vote, and another committee had a different opinion. If that's fine, we can keep it that way. I'm just worried that someone may ask that question as to our procedure.
That was the reason I actually asked for criteria, but also I would say every committee is different and has different needs, and that's a chair's job.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Anything else, Susan?
I just want to, oh yes, I have something I have to ask. I have to bring my other computer. Charlie Anderson, who works for Deborah Glick, contacted me because they have discretionary distribution for state-made hand sanitizer. And it's a big deal. They're actually, generally it's request forms. I've actually gotten people request forms, but they are willing to give, and it's very stinky. I got to tell you that, it's really stinky. So they would like to know if we want to reserve a certain amount for organizations in Deborah's district, which is very small in our area. It's, around where the community board office is, and I think they go to First Avenue. They can reserve up to 3 gallons for organizations in our district. They would be distributed in gallon jars, and the organizations would have to put them in smaller containers. And that's basically it. I wanted to make a suggestion, since there's so few organizations within Deborah's area, that we suggest JASA and Cooper Square Committee. I'm going to say, I just thought of one more, and that's the 3rd Street Men's Shelter.
Well, if we're getting 3 bottles, they can each have one, and I mean, I'm fine with that. I just think that, those sound like the same bottles that were delivered to NYCHA complexes, and the issue there is, again, because it's a gallon bottle, they really don't have a way to distribute it to people unless somebody comes with a little tiny bottle that they can pump it into.
And they may not want it for that reason, but those are the only organizations I could think of in Deborah's area.
There's also GMAC. I'm sorry, the Greenwich Village Society, whatever their new name is, and GVHP, and the 3rd Street School.
You're absolutely correct. I didn't think of those as needing hand sanitizer in the same way, but you're right.
Well, I would say that, sorry, go ahead, May.
I was thinking maybe there aren't too many organizations like that, but are there organizations that would use it on site, because they're still seeing a lot of members from the public, so they need to use it right at the site as opposed to distributing it to individuals?
Not that I know.
Because okay, because I teach at the settlement house uptown, and they just have this huge gallon in the office, I don't go there very much, but when I go there, I see this, and it's really for all the people who are still working there.
This is not the area of our community that has a lot of social services.
Okay.
Sirovich may be in her district too. I'm not sure. I'd have to check, but I think it might.
I think you're right. So it's Sirovich, JASA. Sirovich and JASA, for everyone, are both senior residences, and Sirovich also has senior programs, so I assume not right now. And then it's the shelter and Cooper Square and Greenwich Village.
So that sounds like 6 now, right, or 7?
So, you know, I could ask if they want to give 2 quarts to each. I mean, I don't know if that's worthwhile. I don't know. I don't know how you want to handle that. So you have 3, 5, I think 5 sites. Maybe Lisa mentioned another one I'm not thinking of. But how do you want to handle that?
I say just give the contact information. If you have access to the contacts there, give it to Charlie, so he could reach out, or at least let them know that they're, you know, if they're in need of it, if they want it, they can get it, and how they go about it. Because I think, was it something that was said that you have to go and pick it up or something like that? They're not dropping it off?
We may be able to distribute in gallon bottles. So it can't be 5, it can't be more than 3, because they're not going to break it down.
So
Charlie's
asking us to identify who to give it to, correct?
Yes, if we want to.
All right. So we need to decide who to give this to and tell Charlie those 3 organizations. But I guess my question is, Susan, since there are more than 3 organizations now, would it make sense, if you have the time, to reach out to these organizations and say, do you even need this? Like we can get
No, I do not have time to do that. If I were choosing, I would choose the ones that are most needy.
Yeah, me too. I agree. Because like I know for a fact that 3rd Street Men's Shelter, they're probably in need of all kinds of, you know, sanitizing items and, you know, protection items. So I would definitely go with them for facts. JASA is our elders, and they are the most vulnerable. So them as well. And what was the other one that Lisa said?
Sirovich.
Yeah, I would the 3 most vulnerable and the 3 that I think are most at need, and suggest that.
What I can do is give them those 3 and say, if any of them don't want it, these are the 2 to follow up with.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
We've got a hand raised by Linda, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say that I don't think Greenwich Village Society's need is on the same level as the 3rd Street Men's Shelter. So put them at the bottom of the list. I'm sure those guys can all get their own hands. Believe me. They're rich over there.
They're all working at home.
Okay, so just one more thing I wanted to mention in this part of the report. People are seeing, have seen areas of need, like Alicia communicated to me this morning that there were certain developments that weren't getting masks. And because of the both district service council and Lower East Side Ready and other connections, I'm able to bring that information and really get it mitigated sometimes quickly. So I just want to make sure that people know they can give me that information. It's not dealing like with one person that needs something, but organizationally something that's falling through and that should be corrected. You know, I can do that after, I mean, I've gotten 3 elected officials now because of Alicia's communication to say, hey, that's a great idea. From now on, whenever I distribute food, I'm going to distribute masks, gloves, and sanitizer. So please let me know if you know it's a real situation, not just someone grumbling about something they heard. If you have a real situation, please let me know so that I can deal with it on an organizational level. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the district needs statement. I know, Susan, you said something? So wanted to talk about the district needs statement. I know that our district needs statement is not going to look like it looked last year, that's for sure. With COVID going on, we know that the needs are going to be quite different, right? So I asked you all to start to generate some ideas as to what each committee would like to contribute towards the district needs statement and what we should be focusing ourselves towards. Ways to focus. Yes, yes, yes. Yes.
Okay, so based on what we've done in the past that have worked, twice before, and this doesn't involve individual needs, twice before the community, the executive committee has set up sort of a format for all the committees to fall within that has worked really well. One of it was when we set up the actual format of sort of being very succinct and brief and bullet points with just the highest priorities. But the time most related to this was after Sandy, in which the exec decided that every committee would kind of talk about what it took away from or learned or what must be done because of Sandy. And I thought just based on what we're hearing, and the committees would kind of know best for their committees, but I think there's a lot, one, of inequity and things that have become very obvious that that relate to what we've learned from this pandemic that the committees might want to consider.
Okay, do I have any hand raises, Michael?
Sorry, I was muted. I forgot. May, go ahead.
I just wanted to answer your question. I was actually going to just say this in my report, but just to answer your question, since you're asking Alicia, is that I have received, actually the Asian community organizations have started this, they have this what's called Asian neighborhood rebuilding plan, or that they are that many organizations citywide are signing on to, including the ones from here, and it covers 5 different areas. 3 are within my committee and 2 are in other committees such as housing and land use and economic development. So it's a list of asks for, like, rebuilding after all this happens. And this is stuff that would take place, of course, in 21, 22. It's not finalized yet, so that's why I didn't pass it around. It's going to be released next week, and they're still getting organization sign-ons and just some tweaks. So it's actually a useful document to look at. Many other communities might have this list of asks too, but I'm not aware of it. And some of these asks are, they can be applied to any ethnic group, not just the Asians.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely the economic development piece is going to be a big factor, and rebuilding small businesses, they suffered quite. I mean, I know our district has suffered quite a loss. I know we have. I mean, I don't even know how many stores are going to reopen, or bars or restaurants or whoever, even some of the little cleaners and, laundromats and stuff, so. Anyone else have their hand raised?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so can I just say in relation to May's, can use that as a basis, but for the district needs, we need to start with assessing our needs and what's happening before we get into asks. And, you know, I'm hoping that we might be able to get a lot of data and information for those areas that those asks are, you know, addressing.
So in our, in the past, I know we did break it up according to subject, right, Susan? I do remember being,
we always do it by committee. Yes, we always do it by committee.
Yeah, so each committee, so we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to ask all of you to, when you think about what it is your committee does and how your committee fits into the district and our community, what are some of the things that you can think of that we could benefit from? Now we're going to be post-COVID, right? Or in COVID. Just like Susan was saying about what was discovered after Sandy, we need to think about what is being discovered now. Definitely food and shelter, you know, some focus definitely needs to be on that. Now we're going to look at crime, safety, you know, so what are some other things that we could be focusing on, the needs of others? Because right now, unemployment rate is through the roof. Many people are going to go post-COVID to nothing. They have no jobs. And so you're going to have an influx of people that may not be able to pay their rents. And I'm not just talking about their housing. Some of them is their businesses. So they're not going to be able to pay the rents. So we'll lose them. So I mean, like, what else could we be thinking about? These are things that we, as an exec, we have to really start to talk about, because it's like, you know, if we don't start this now, we're going to be stuck at the last minute trying to figure it out. And that's not cool. You know, we really need to start planning. I want us to really plan this out and really think about it, so that we can move forward. Any thoughts from anyone out there? I hear crickets.
Anisha, go ahead.
Good now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I haven't been part of a district needs from this side before. So I was wondering if you could sort of just in like a minute explain the process of how this is supposed to work a little bit. I've seen it obviously in committee, but what happens before it even gets to committee for everybody to talk about? I think the challenge certainly for economic development is going to be that, like, we don't know, right? There's a lot of stuff that we just don't know yet. And I think everybody is sort of taking it, you know, not only day by day, but like, it's hard to project where the city's economy is going to be the next month, the next year, so on. So it's something that, you know, I'm working on to figure out, put some guiding thoughts together on that with Megan still. But I think, you know, it's going to take some time to fully know what's going to be happening.
Could I suggest that when we meet Monday that we go over the process, and like May was talking about the social service organizations, I think if you connect with Megan on this, there's a lot of business organizations that are also coming up with very specific needs and asks that could be used as a basis.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Anisha.
That's all. That's all.
Jackie?
Hi, I don't have, this is not really about a need. It's just that because post-COVID, our focus will be on revitalizing the economy. And I just want to see if there's any way the city can reduce the excessive enforcement or just cut the red tapes, specifically with the Department of Department of Health and Department of Building. The reason is because construction is a big part of economy, and restaurants is a big part of a small business. So, and I, over the years, I've been seeing a lot of excessive enforcement. So, but at the same time, we want to make sure everything is safe and sound. So how to make that balance, I want to see if there's anything city can do. And
that's already part of what the business groups are coming up with.
Great, thank you.
He's specifically addressing that.
Thank you.
Alex?
So, you know, I appreciate that we may be focusing sort of on economy and business, and we should, but it's so expansive what we have to sort of undertake, and we have to decide, you know, are there going to be, I guess we'll have to look at the different plans to see if we should be adopting components or all of certain plans, but it's as expansive as how much capacity should, like, you know, a restaurant have that had a capacity of 74? What kind of traffic should there be on a street in terms of, you know, pedestrian traffic? I appreciate that the mayor is opening up avenues, but what do we do with all of our streets, and how do our people like flow through the streets? What is the population of a park supposed to be like? There are so many sort of fundamental things we need to be thinking about, and we're only into, you know, month 1+ of even sort of contemplating, like Anisha said, what the outcome might be, or how it will look as we go on, and how it will change even day to day and week to week.
Well, see, this is, I'm sorry, Michael, can I just say something? I think this is great because we do have to just have the conversation. I mean, we won't know anything until we start to spark the conversation around it, because we cannot just sit back and just watch it unfold in front of us. And then it leaves us all in a very bad place when it's time to really generate everything and sit down and start to really plan out what this document has to look like. You know, we've had issues in the past where we've like struggled with trying to put it all together with having statistics, and the statistics are right in front of us every single day. The mayor and the governor just go at it, and they tell us all kinds of stats on stuff. So I think we just need to start documenting some of the things that are happening. And like you said, yeah, there's specific things that we're going to need to talk about that we never really focused on before. Thank you, Alex, for that input.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, should I go on more about just about the budget related stuff? So yes, I was going to say, you know, following on what Alicia just said, I think people have to be careful not to be anecdotal, but to have that data to back it up. But also based on what Alex was saying about only being a month or two into it, I've been worried about the same thing. And I had suggested that we delay the vote till August. And what I'm going to suggest, I revised my thinking, and I'd like to make another suggestion. We don't need to turn it in till October. We can't wait till October to do it, because then it's going to lead into the budget priorities. So what I would like to suggest is that we have it finished by August, but not vote on it, in case there are changes and things that come up between then and October, that we could make those changes. And I just also want to remind people that this is a document to assess our needs, and that we will then afterward be voting on specific budget priorities. So then we will vote for youth programs, senior programs, that kind of thing. That follows later. In conjunction with that, there are budget consultations that the 12 Manhattan boards have with agencies in September. I have the dates, but I don't have them handy because my calendar's in the office, but I will get those to you. And so the chairs do attend those with the district managers. We make up agendas ahead of time. I need any questions for agendas by the end of June. That's not something we have to vote on. We're not taking a position, we're asking questions. I will get to you the agendas from last year so you have an idea. But basically, if you want to know the status of a program, if it still exists, that kind of thing, we should put that on the agenda to ask about it. You can't vote on a budget priority without knowing about the status of something. And committees can also have one-on-one district level meetings with agencies. Parks does this every year. We usually do it in July. They want to do it in August this year. Other committees, if there are issues that we can ask an agency that relate directly to Community Board 3 and not general, like a senior program, but if it's about something specific like streets, certain streets or projects, let me know and we can set up a meeting. They can be during the day. I guess they're going to be by Zoom. So that's just sort of covering the breadth of their process that I wanted to get through. If there's no, so what do you think about like having the district needs as ready as possible in August, but not voting on it and voting on it at the same time we vote on our budget priorities in case there are last minute changes that need to be made?
I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
Great suggestion.
Okay.
Linda, go
That's it.
ahead. You're
Okay.
muted,
I
Linda.
say that's all I
Yeah.
There, I'm
Linda?
sorry. Someday I'm going to learn. I agree with Susan. I was thinking that maybe something should be, there should be some sort of a deadline there for your, maybe it's your draft district needs or something that should be assembled so that.
August, it needs to be in August because in September
Yeah, in August.
and October, you're going to be voting on budget priorities.
I understand. I just want there to be a milestone in August that's specific.
The committee.
Yeah. And you.
I'll be at the committee. I always
You
say,
or Jim or whoever should see.
yeah, either Jim or I will be at all
Draft
the,
district needs so the committee knows it has to produce them. Got it?
So
Yeah.
my question to that is, typically in normal times, we don't meet in August.
we don't need what?
Committees typically don't meet in August in normal times, except for SLA.
Correct.
So this plan requires the committees to be meeting in August and to work on their district needs, right?
It looks that way, but you can make that decision in July too. I mean, you could confirm it. I would like to plan on it, but you can see where you're at in July.
Okay.
Okay. And you know, you could always go on the CB3 website and look for the past district needs statements that we worked on before. You can always do that and start to just generate some ideas from last year's district needs statement. Yes, Susan.
Okay, so Jim has already gone through it and made comments on it, and I need to get it from him and send it to all the chairs.
Okay, thank you. All right, so here we go. We're gonna look at our timeline, and I'm so sorry. I could have sworn I had a copy of the timeline, which I know it's also on the website. So we could look at the timeline. The timeline,
Right
and
there.
that
Right.
is okay. Let me see. Can you pull it up?
It's on the website.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, it's
Well,
on
it should be on your screen.
it's on your screen, on your Zoom screen.
Okay, I'm trying to get there. Okay, here we go. So right now we are in May and we are right on schedule with the new members. They just got on board. So next they're gonna get a committee. But what was pointed out to me was that we are missing something in our timeline, which needs to go right after the appointment of the new committee members is that we need to have a celebration to welcome them in. Yeah, somewhere in between now and June, the beginning of June, or I'm open to suggestions. We could do a Zoom party for the new members. I mean, we're not going to be getting together, obviously, but definitely we could do a Zoom party, right? And what should that look like? We should start to talk about what that needs to look like. Each chairperson of every committee should be on board for that, to give a description of your committee and maybe give a little personal statement as to, you know, your experience on the community board. If you'd like to do that, that may be a nice idea. Or you could just think of something in general that you would like to share with the new members, because they don't know you, they don't know your committee, they don't know what you do. So, I mean, just keep all of this in mind. It's like talking to a perfect stranger, right? It's like when you get together with people, you just want them to know a little bit about yourself. You don't have to go on and be long-winded about it, but like maybe give it about 5 minutes, you know, like a little 5-minute statement about your committee and, you know, who you are, what you do. And, you know, like I know Anisha's a new chair and Paul is a new chair, but, you know, you can give your experience of being members on the community board and sitting on your committee. And I also would like us to think about, you know, what that could look like, because we could be festive with it. It doesn't necessarily have to be very dull like a meeting. I've never been to a Zoom party, but I'm hearing great things. People are telling me all these wonderful things that they're doing on Zoom. And I heard about Cinco de Mayo parties the other day. So, I mean, I'm open to suggestions as to what this could look like for the new members, because we don't want to scare anyone away because they just got here, and we want to keep them, and how to stay connected. I definitely think that we need to think about how to keep them connected to, you know, being a part of Community Board 3.
Trevor had his hand up, but he put it down, so.
Okay.
My question was for Susan, but I can wait until my committee report.
Okay.
So we need to add in between May and June, there needs to be new member party or new member celebration or something like that. Let's add some wording to it in there between June.
I can't add to this because it's on the website.
We need to make an amendment.
I just want to just include it in the minutes. If you be sure to include it in the minutes, we'll do it.
Yeah. Michelle, please include this in the minutes that we agreed to add that to the timeline for future reference. This is something that, courtesy of the office, this was created to kind of help us along, because actually we, members of the exec, should be looking at this quite a bit and focusing on it and seeing where we can also make amendments to it and say during this time, like now we're in the midst of COVID, right? So we could be adding some other stuff for future reference, you know, for the time to come, because we don't know if we're gonna have another bout of this stuff, right? That's what they're saying. So we probably will be using Zoom in the future. You know, even after we all get back together, it may be a possibility that Zoom will be around for a long time to come, or something like this, some type of engine like this, right? Okay, so periodically, can I ask for someone to help us by looking at this? I mean, I don't often look at it. I'm gonna be honest with you. I only look at it when it's like, oh, Snoop, it's June. What are we doing in June? So like, I go back to it and I'll refer and I say, oh yeah, the new members are coming on. And I'm like, all right, so now what? So then we go to public members have to be reapplied, right? Okay, then trainings. What do the trainings look like? What should we be training the new members on, or all the members? What should we have trainings on? Now that we have Zoom, we can actually say, oh, we can actually do some training on Zoom now, right? Like maybe 45 minutes to an hour training on something, and who could help us design and create a little brief training. And it should always be something about SLA, something about land use, some parliamentary procedures, things like that. These are the things that should be on that type. Office procedures for sure. I know Susan, is a big stickler on office procedure and making sure we honor those things. So, yeah, so a little bit of everything, right? We need to like kind of mush it all together and make it look like something and turn it into no more than an hour so that people don't lose, focus. They don't want to, you don't want to bore them to death, right? But we do need to let them know there are certain things that they need to know if they're sitting on certain committees, or even if they're voting on a vote sheet, they need to learn certain languages, right? So who could maybe help me to generate a training on this? Because I think that it's important, especially SLA, land use. So that would be Alex, Jackie, what else? Susan for sure, or maybe,
Well,
yeah.
David and I always used to do a combination one on how to write a resolution and what does the office do. The documents are already made. They're actually on the website. So we could easily do that.
Okay, so that sounds like something good. And those shouldn't take any more than like 20 minutes a piece, right?
Mhm.
So that would be like 20 minutes of that and 20 minutes of the other. And then Alex, could you give me like a 20-minute or like a 10-minute something?
She's got her hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yes, sure. And what do you want it to look like? Tell me again.
So it should be like general language that they should know about when they're voting on the vote sheet on SLA items. When you talk about the 500-foot rule, when you talk about going before the SLA board, things like that. I mean, like things that we need to know when we're voting on a vote sheet when we talk about SLA items.
Sure.
I would say
about 20 minutes.
Yeah, no more than 20 minutes. Each item should be no more than 20 minutes. Go ahead.
All right. I was just going to say, Alex, I think that something similar to what you did when you presented to the full board about what your committee does. Something like that. But Alicia, I also think that we might want to include as part of this the documents that we put together after our training with the outside facilitator about what the role of the chair is, how the public participates in our meetings, and stuff like that.
Okay.
And Jackie's got his hand up, so go ahead, Jackie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I can also put together a presentation for Europe applications and BSA applications. That should take like 15-20 minutes. That should be fine.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay.
Can I just tell Jackie that under member resources, there's information from BSA, presentations from BSA you might want to look at, use for reference.
Thank you. That would save me a lot of time. Thanks.
Anyone else have any suggestions? Let's see, that's 2, 4, 6. That's an hour. Oh, wow. We're going a little bit over an hour.
Can I suggest we do this in 2 meetings?
Yeah, okay. That sounds like a plan. That does sound like a plan. We could definitely break it up into 2 separate trainings and, have them lock on for those. Okay. And then we look at questions for the budget priority. Susan, are we going to still keep that in June?
I just actually talked about that. And what I mentioned was that in June, I need the questions for the agenda. Do we have that? Submit questions for budget priority consults. So that's what I just discussed and said I would get last year's to the chairs so that they have a good reference on what kind of questions we're talking about. And if Michelle could put my promises in the minutes to help me, thank you.
Yeah, and July, we're definitely not going to be voting on the district needs statement. So we know that that's something that we're going to continue to work on, like Susan said earlier, because we don't have to submit it until, what you say, October, right, Susan?
Right. We'll vote on, we have to vote on everything in October. They want everything generally by October 31st.
So that means that we need to change this around, the vote on the district needs statement for the month of July. we'll continue to work on the district needs statement. So we could edit that, Michelle, and just put, we'll still be working on the district needs statement.
What I would, if you don't mind, I'd like to maybe put certain things in red, the changes that are just for this year because of COVID. Maybe I can add those in red as COVID only scheduling.
Okay, okay. So, okay. So when everything kind of goes back to maybe a little bit of way it was, we can go back to this timeline.
Right, thank you.
Alicia, if I could just say, going back to the training and splitting it up into two, I think that what might make the most sense is if the first training is more about like the procedural stuff, like the office stuff, the role of the chair, the you know, how public participates, and and then the second one can maybe be the one where the chairs of the committees do their dog and pony show.
Okay, that sounds like a plan, because that'll probably be a little shorter than the procedures and reso writing. Sure.
You want to, I was going to say it might be too short. I don't know. It might not be enough for one training. But I like the way I'm committed to David when he's not here.
We can start with it once you have the notes figured out. We can. I mean, we don't need to take up time during this meeting to.
Yeah, I don't want to hold people up because it's like 8 o'clock now. So, all right.
Lisa's got her hand up.
Huh? Lisa?
I just wanted to briefly say that we should include in the basic training something about the requirements for attendance.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Great idea.
I think that should come up during our party, the Zoom party. Everybody needs to talk about that and why it's so important.
So we could put the attendance in, if you want, under procedural with the resolution in the office, and make attendance another category if you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we going to set dates?
That's what I'm just about to say, Susan. Thank you for taking those words out of my mouth. Yes, we have to talk about some dates here. So can we talk about first the date for the Zoom gathering? Can we set some dates? Please, everybody look at your calendars, go to your calendar, pull it out. I'm going there right now. And are we looking in this month, or should we wait until, I think we should wait until June after the full board. Anyone else for suggestions?
So they're attending full board for the first time, right?
They're attending, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It might make sense to do it if we can before that then, so they have some familiarity with us.
Okay. Okay, so before full board, I know there are a couple of committee meetings going on.
Every night next.
Huh?
Every night next week except Friday, there's a committee meeting.
Okay. So we will have, how are you all with having a Sunday Zoom? I mean, Sunday afternoon, I'm normally free after I do my worship. So like the 17th, or, well, that's cutting it too close. The 24th and, or the 30th. The 24th would have to be the ideal date because full board is going to be the 26th. So what are you all thinking? Can I have some hands up?
Fine for me.
Okay, that's one for Michael. Anyone else? Who else is on? Who was that?
Okay, from me. Oh, May.
That was May. That's 2.
Alex,
Repeat the date, please.
The 24th, Sunday the 24th, and should we say at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock? What time, guys? So that's 5:24 at, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Linda is voting for 2 p.m.
2 p.m. Anyone else thinking, are we all in agreement for 5:24 at 2 p.m.?
Lisa Kaplan says 2 p.m. also. You guys can just put it in the chat if you want. Paul Rangel's fine. Eric Diaz is fine. Jackie Wong is fine.
Okay.
Mei Lee is fine. Michelle, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Can I just clarify, this is for the introduction party?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Thanks.
this is not for the training.
Right. This is the Zoom gathering, Zoom party, new member party, as what we normally call it, new members gathering or party.
All right, there's nobody in the chat saying that the 2 p.m. doesn't.
So that's the locked in date. We're gonna lock that date in, 5/24 at 2 p.m. Zoom. Everyone come and be festive and whatever vivations you like to bring to the table while you're at your house, you can do it your way. It's your day.
Can I ask a question, Alicia? Oh, are we inviting the full board, or is it just the executive committee with the members?
We can open it up to the full board. Maybe some full board members would like to join us so they can meet the new members as well, you know, because we'll all be able to see one another. So I think that, Michael, you're going to have to send out a blast, a big Zoom blast for that one. Even we can invite maybe, you know, I mean, we don't normally invite the elected officials, but I mean, Margaret and Carlina for sure, if they'd like to attend, just so they can see who they appointed, you know.
We
That'd
have.
be
They
nice.
have been invited in the past, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, and Gail too, right, Susan? Gail has been
Yeah.
invited. Okay. So let's invite the 3 electeds. Okay.
Okay.
That'd be nice. All right. So we're locked in on that date, 5/24 at 2 p.m. I'll see you sharp. Okay. Let's go on to the next agenda item. Going back to the agenda. We'll continue to look at the timeline, you know, as we go on. We should look at it periodically, like I said, maybe every other month, give it a look over.
So do you want me to keep it on the agenda as a standing item?
I think we should, Susan, because then that way it keeps us all focused.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, Michael.
So I believe that the next agenda item is the
Social media.
social media. And
Yeah.
Joe, who I moved over into panelist so that he can talk, set up an amazing document that I was going to share with you guys, but I seem to have closed it, so I don't have access to it anymore. So I'm not going to share it with you. But anyway, Joe set up this great document that basically what he did over the past few days was looked at all of the community boards, Facebook, social media, and what they were posting, what they weren't posting, and how they were using Facebook, so he can compare it to ours, so that we have a better idea, like what we're posting is stuff that's relevant, that people want to see, and how we're comparing to other boards as far as how many followers we have and whatnot. Joe, do you want to say anything more about it? Joe?
He was there. He was there. Where is he? Joe, where are you? He says
Anyway,
hi. Okay, what's...
I bring this up because what we're going to do is Susan is going to, I believe, take this document now to her district managers meeting, and to see if we can sort of beef it up a little with kind of who's responsible for doing social media, you know, because you know, we're very lucky that we have Joe and that we have Tati and myself to do this stuff, but some other boards don't have community board members that are savvy to be able to do it, so the district manager is doing it instead. So we're going to try to figure that out, and then possibly share this document with the borough president's office, since it's pretty detailed with everything. And I think I just finally moved Joe over, and there he is. Joe.
Hi. Yes. Oh, I have a crazy background. Do you want me to quickly share the screen so I can give people a sense of what I did?
Yeah, if you have it up, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think you disabled it, but I can send it over the chat if that would be helpful.
Why don't
Or
you keep talking and I'll bring it up.
yeah, I sent it over the chat, so you should be able to open it up. Yeah, I mean, it's relatively, basically what I did is I looked across the 12 Manhattan community boards, just see what they were posting. I think Susan, Michael, and I had often had discussions about just, is this appropriate for us to post? And so it's just trying to get a sense of, if you look at the benchmark across everyone else, like what is everyone else posting? And we just started posting, so we are far and away. So if you look at the spreadsheet, column D is just the community board. Column E is just the link to their Facebook account. And then I roughly try to get a sense of how often people were posting. I would say we post multiple times a week, but community board 4 actually posts multiple times a day, particularly during COVID-19. And like 9, 10, 11 also are posting multiple times a day. Because we just resumed the Facebook account a couple months ago, only have about 100 likes or followers. And the highest is community board 9, which has more than 1,000. And then consistently across all the groups, you'll see that everyone posts kind of calendar and meeting updates. And community boards, I think 7 and 8 are actually posting videos, embedding videos of the full board and actually embedding videos of the full committee meetings, which I thought was interesting because very few people are actually doing that. And then as you move across, I think it's relatively consistent, which is we have chosen not to post kind of New York City wide news because we're trying to post things that are relevant to our community itself. Some community boards do post that, but we do not. And we try to post news that's relevant to the neighborhood and try to post news that's relative, that's kind of electeds, announcements or elected events. And so that's columns J onward, is just kind of documenting what various groups are doing across the different community boards.
Thank you, Joe. Alicia, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that, I know you talked about talking to Susan about doing like some shout outs. Did you ever work on that document yet about the shout outs and what that would look like?
Well, I think that's why he did this, because he wanted to see if other. So what Alicia is talking about is that I proposed to Alicia and Susan as a possible post that we post something congratulating our 5 new members. And Susan had mentioned that that was sort of unprecedented and it was something we had never done before, was sort of shouting out particular community board members. So that's why Joe started working on this grid that he put together to see what other community boards were doing. And I think, as you can see, one of the columns says what.
Yeah, I think it's column Q. I think literally the last column in the spreadsheet. It basically no one posts anything about their members, whether or not it's people coming on board or just kind of anything around kind of new members or anything like that. That's not what anyone is posting. It was actually kind of interesting how consistent that was across all of the community boards. It's mostly kind of news, elected events, relevant kind of webinars, or calendar or video of board meetings.
I wonder why that's so. Maybe people just want to remain as private as possible. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
What I would say is, for a community board, it's outreach on important news. It's not a social document like your personal social media is.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, that's
Did
the
I
crux.
say a few things about the media? First of all, I want to, you can't laugh at me, but I was really ignorant at figuring out what was where. And I couldn't figure out why all the stuff from other boards were there. And then I found out that was the community page as opposed to our page. I want to say, even though we don't have the board videos on social media, they're all on our website. We now have on our website, put on top of community resources, he put links to our Twitter account. They put links to our Twitter account and our Facebook account. So hopefully there'll start being better crossover. I think after this COVID stuff dies down, it'll never be the problem, you know, to keep it up the way it is now. I would like to ask just if we could do one thing, if it's possible. I was looking, you know, some of the posts, it seems to be very limited on what shows on a post before you click more. And I was looking today at the Transportation Committee one, and it started off like with open streets. And then if you click more, then when you go inside, it tells people to go to the Transportation Committee meeting. And I wonder if we could, as a general thing, kind of reverse that order and, you know, first, you know, try and get people.
First. Yeah, that's right.
Try and get people to our board meetings, and then, you know, sort of promote why they should come and give input at a board meeting.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's also helpful, Susan. I think that this came up also with some of the other stuff that you were forwarding for posting, and that, you know, it's helpful to let Joe know and Tati know sort of what you want them, like what's the most important thing from that you want them to highlight. Otherwise, they might just post the whole thing that you send them, and that's sort of. I'll be
happy to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Other than that, I mean, other than profusely thanking Joe for taking this over and for doing it in such an amazing way, that is the end of our social media report.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Now we're going, I guess, into our committee reports. Let's bring it back up. Uh-oh. What's happening here?
SLA is first, so Alex.
Okay.
My meeting is next week.
Okay.
Did you hear me? I want me to say anything else, because my meeting is next week.
Okay,
Yeah,
I heard.
all the meetings are next week, so there probably won't be a lot of reporting to do, but.
Yeah. Well, does anyone, okay, so we'll just go down the line. Transportation, anything to report?
We're going to be meeting on Tuesday about open streets, and anybody who wants to come in to the Zoom, please come in, give your opinion. It's important that we get a lot of opinions on what's about to happen.
I have a question.
Trevor has a question for Paul.
Sure.
Paul, I had raised this before, but obviously the community boards are being left out of the process of selecting streets. Are you going to discuss that, or are we just going to discuss what streets have been proposed?
Well, there's already a couple of streets that are already in the pilot that are down here. But we are discussing and putting a resolution together of which streets we want to see closed that we would recommend.
Okay.
I can't help myself from saying that it's a pitiful pilot. I just tried to walk on one of the closed streets and I got hit by a FedEx truck.
Oh my God.
No.
I mean, I didn't really get hit, but if it's, the cops told me it was closed from 8 a.m. to noon.
Yes.
Correct.
Right now the pilot is 8 a.m. to 12 p.m.
So
Which
we're
is,
going to talk about extending.
but we'll talk about it on Tuesday.
Okay.
And can I just say to Trevor that the mayor, it's phase one. You're right. They left us out of the process for phase one. They are specifically asking us for suggestions for the next phase. And, you know, hopefully, I've asked Carlina's office, they've gotten a number of suggestions. And they'll forward us to us by tomorrow morning. I should have them on the website. I got a few from Margaret's office also. Unfortunately, we didn't get any, we're not getting any from the community. I wish we would. If people want to do outreach and try and get people to send in suggestions, it would be great.
Unfortunately, I think the only suggestions you're going to get are when people complain. That's the only time you're going to get it.
Well, board two got loads of suggestions, so I don't know why people won't give suggestions.
They also had a committee meeting before they implemented the streets.
Okay. We got to move on for the sake of time. I'm sorry. Economic development. This is Anisha's first Zoom exec.
So we're not meeting this month, but in terms of sort of general economic development things. As everybody knows, the city is starting to host those, the councils, the working groups to figure out how to reopen various parts of the city's economy. So hoping that there'll be some things that come out of that to inform sort of our June conversations.
Thank you, Anisha. Health, Human Services, Youth. May?
I had to, I had to unmute myself. I'm sorry. So no, we are not having a meeting in May. And as I reported before, we're going to be getting more list of the, ask and budget priorities for many health and human services organization, although mainly in the Asian community. But the other interesting thing that came up is that some of the, I think it was mainly the settlement houses across the city sent a letter to the city that human service workers should also be considered essential workers and should also receive the hazard pay and the incentive pay and all the other things that, like the hospital workers and the firefighters are receiving. Because as you know, some of them are still working and, putting their health at risk, but the agencies haven't received extra funding for that. Yeah, that's it. No. Alicia says, yep.
Yep, I'm one of those people. Okay, land use.
Last week I attended a presentation organized by DCAS on 70 Mulberry Street. It is the nonprofit building that was burned down by fire. Basically, the DCAS people told us the building needs to be demolished because of safety reason. And we asked them to present it again at our land use meeting on May 14 so that the public can be updated as well. And so I also attended a NYCHA town hall yesterday, and NYCHA the new NYCHA chairman, Gregory Roos, was there too. So he talked about his vision of NYCHA, including recapitalizing their portfolios and reorganize NYCHA. There's one thing pretty interesting I found, but I'm not very familiar with that, because when he talked about NYCHA privatization, he also mentioned something about quote unquote releasing the potential of NYCHA families, and I'm really not sure what that means, and I probably would have to consult Eric on that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, landmarks.
We did not meet, but we are going to meet this month.
Yep, you are.
For a
Okay.
change.
Linda, you talk about your committee request form.
I haven't formulated it yet, Susan.
Okay.
Committee request.
She's going to change her committee request form, and Alicia needs them to send out to the new members, so we have to wait until it's amended. But
okay.
But Linda, we really need
I'd
to.
like to consult the committee, but if we're meeting this week, is that okay?
Well, we need to consult the exec, because if you're asking for things not to be heard in other committees and be on this committee, I think that's a discussion of the exec.
Okay. Can you remind me exactly of the language?
Okay, so I'm going to let everyone know what this is about. We have an agenda item coming up in June because the emergency I think it's EMT building on the waterfront is going to be renovated because of Sandy, but it's going to change the outward appearance. So these kind of issues, like there have been parks buildings and they have always gone to parks. So this is a agency related to public safety. So should it go to transportation, public safety? We've never had those kind of things in that committee like this. But then again, it's a toss-up. So I had asked Linda about whether it'd be appropriate for her committee, but it's still a toss-up whether it would be going to the Landmarks Committee, although it's not a landmarks, or whether it would go to the committee concerning that agency, which there's also a precedent for. So we expect, I'm sure this kind of thing will come up again. And so that's why I thought it was, it's a cross-committee issue, which is why I wanted direction from the exec. And Linda had thought maybe it could be worded in the committee request form to allow, at least allow that to be in that committee.
Yeah, I don't know of any other committee other than Parks that handles these kind of, it has to go to the Public Arts Commission for approval. We have done that occasionally, probably for, you know, somebody said, where should we put that? And it came to Landmarks. And it's allied, you know, it's not completely different. So, but of course, if it's in a park, Trevor, you may wish to continue handling that kind of thing.
Trevor's got his hand up. Go ahead, Trevor.
All right, which building is this?
It's an, I think it's on Pier 36. And it's, I think EMT workers, staff.
So it's the Pier 36 building. It's one large building at 270 South Street. I didn't realize it. What's the issue? I didn't realize it was an issue.
They're renovating it and they have to come before the committee, before the community board, before they go to the design commission. So it's really could be across 3 different committees. And I just thought, you know, if we're gonna change the committee request form so that it could go to Landmarks or it could go to the others, it should be done in a way that all the committees would agree on.
I don't see any other way other than a joint committee. Is that what we're talking about? Meeting?
No. Joint, I'm going to be honest, joint committees never work. People never show up.
Yeah.
You can certainly have people come, you know, they can come to a committee, but if you have joint committees, you generally don't have quorum. I think 95% of the time you won't have a quorum.
So
Go ahead, Michael.
No, I was just going to say, so the issue is we need to decide what committee is most appropriate for this building's renovation to be heard by. And what it sounds like you were saying is that Linda was proposing sort of loosening up her committee description to allow for these types of things to just sort of fall into Landmarks if there wasn't obviously if it was a park bathhouse or comfort station, it would go to Parks. But this is a park building that's being used by Health and Human Services. Is that what basically we're talking about?
This is not a park building.
Not a Parks building.
It's not a Parks building. So I actually contacted Linda because it's what her committee does. And what we had discussed was changing her committee discussion so that these could go to her committee. And we're not saying that they have to, but we're saying that they could go to her committee, that would be an option that, you know, the exec can decide when they come up.
The other issue is that the Parks Committee also has waterfront under the title. So we also look at waterfront issues. And this is actually.
And it's a public safety. It's the fire department is the one that called me, which is why it would also go under public safety because they have the fire department. So it goes in a lot of places. Linda's, I can say the committee has less work and they know how to do.
We don't want to take anything away from another committee. Trevor, if you want to handle it, hey, it's yours.
No, I'm just learning about it. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Because
it never occurred to me because it's not a parks building and it is a fire department building. The fire department is presenting.
Okay, we've got a hand up by Lisa Kaplan. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm trying to envision this building, but isn't it just a boxy piece of nothing building? It's not anyway a distinctive building. I think the issue really here, well, first of all, maybe the first question is, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the definition of committees, or are we talking about what committee this particular issue should go to? So I guess I'm speaking on what I don't think was the issue that brought this up in the first place. But it seems to me that what's really the crux of the issue here is whether or not the renovation is going to serve public safety needs. It's really not making this a pretty building. It's a garage. Am I right, Trevor? Is that the building we're talking about?
So the issue is
like a piece of junk building.
The
so
issue
to me, the
design commission needs a from the community board.
Of course, the design commission has to look at everything, but it's not really a design thing. It's really a functionality thing, I would argue. So that's my point on who should hear it. The point, and I don't think generally that we should change definitions of committees for, you know, oddball things like this. I think that the definitions of committees are pretty well established.
So if I could say, the issue is not the functionality that we're going to be doing a resolution on. The issue is the changing of the outside appearance. So it's probably irrelevant and unimportant, and everything you say, I agree with you, but that's what they want us to write on. We have every year slightly changed the committee descriptions, and I wasn't going to change it for this. We can always make a one-time decision for this. What it was just broadening the committee description so it isn't just landmarks, to reflect what it actually does, which is not just landmarks and certificate of appropriateness, but other design commission issues. That would be it.
So for the sake of trying to move on here, Trevor, do you want this in parks? I'm
just finding out because that's why I'm asking questions, because like, for example, Basketball City, which is actually the same type of big, ugly, boxy structure, has a design change, which they will come before us because they want to put a sign up there. Are you saying they should handle that, or should it stay with the waterfront?
No, the Basketball City is EDC, and EDC always comes to Parks Waterfront. I was going by the agency.
And this is SBS, correct? Which is
No,
CDC.
it's fire department. No, it's fire department.
But EDC owns the property.
The building is a fire department building, and they are the ones that are hiring the architect and doing it, and they're the ones that need the support letter from us.
No, I know, Susan, but just follow my train. Basketball City also owns that property. EDC owns the land. Fire department owns that building. They would bring their own architects, just like Basketball City would bring their own architects. There's no difference. It's an SBS with the land lease from EDC. Now, I'm not saying that I want this in the committee or not. I'm just asking questions for clarification.
You're absolutely right on all of that. And as we've discussed before, SBS is actually involved in all of this, but they never participate. Like Basketball City, we always deal with EDC. In this case, it's the fire department. So can put it, I didn't assign it. I wouldn't even tell the fire department a date until I talk to the exec. So you have wide open options.
Tony, he's not in here.
So Trevor, do you have a preference? Do you think this should come to your committee, or are you okay with it going to landmarks?
What's the date of this again? I'm sorry, Susan.
There is no, I didn't give them a date. It's in, oh, I'm sorry, it's in June. It'll be on the June agenda. They actually are holding up the design commission for us for our letter, because I told them we couldn't do it without a vote.
I don't have either for or against. If it comes to my committee, I'm fine. If it doesn't, I'm fine. But I do think that we need to think about this, because there are a lot of structures along the waterfront which have typically gone through parks and waterfront because they're actually on a pier as opposed to being on solid ground that we need to think about, because Basketball City would fall into this, and some of the park structures would fall into this that have traditionally gone to parks and waterfront.
So,
I agree. I think that's very helpful to have a criteria.
so to get us moving forward, as much as I would love firemen to come to Parks and Rec, just so I can look at firemen during our meeting, I would say that because Landmarks typically doesn't have as much of an agenda as Parks does, that my proposal is to put this into Landmarks.
So can we also agree to just kind of broaden the committee to a description to sort of officially allow these kind of items?
Well, I'm a little hesitant about that, Susan. Well, like I said, then structures like Basketball City and any peer things would all go to Landmarks, and I just don't think that's the area for it.
I said to allow them, not to say they should go there, but to say that they can go there, not that they should.
Well, how I feel that I think that's problematic for this particular item, considering the timing. I'm not, it's not that big a deal, but I think that if we're going to have a parks waterfront resiliency, because I imagine the design is also going to involve resiliency, that we kind of need to keep that under the waterfront. Yes. It's just what it is. Otherwise, we're going to move all the structures out of parks to Landmarks. And I know they're not busy, but that's the nature of the beast of parks and waterfront. It's busy, we have a lot of items, and because we have a long and expansive waterfront, I don't think we should just move stuff off that area because of a committee doesn't have a lot to do. So that being said, I'm a little, if that's the way we're going, I don't think it should move out of parks and waterfront.
I was just going to confirm that we wouldn't change the committee description, but that this one would go to Landmarks. So now you're saying something else, right?
Primarily because just for consistency, which I've talked about since the beginning of this meeting, that we kind of need to be consistent. If we're moving it because a committee doesn't have a lot to do, that's a different story. But if we're looking at it for
that was not the reason. We don't want the.
No, I'm not saying that. Someone had mentioned it. I'm not saying that you said that, Linda, but I just want to make sure.
I said that aside. So I'm putting it in parks for June. That's what we're doing.
I don't know how I won that, but okay.
You just said you wanted it.
You asked for it.
No, I was just trying to protect the committee description, but okay.
Whatever you want it.
Okay. It's fine. Leave it at parks.
So it's coming to parks. We're not doing anything with the committee description, and now it's time for Trevor to give his report.
Okay.
That being said, I guess we're going to have a firehouse in June, but we did write a letter. Susan, I don't know if we distributed it to everyone.
It went out. Yes, it went out to everyone.
The city, obviously, we're expecting a lot of cuts in parks, and our letter basically says not only do we don't want the cuts, but we're probably going to need more funding for parks, just because that's where everyone is going. And we'll have a lot of social distancing problems, and the parks right now are crowded and packed. I don't know if there's anyone who lives near a park on a nice day, including today, the parks are packed. So the fact that the city would think about cutting maintenance and staff is sort of incredulous. This question goes to Susan in terms of our committee, and I know we've gotten a couple of requests for items to be on the agenda. I guess we can move them to agenda now if we're not just looking at items that need to be voted on. But we had discussed it before, and city agencies were said that they were not meeting after 6 p.m. or regular work hours. Have they changed that?
Yes. So it wasn't all city agencies. It was just one. And after I got very upset, they called me and they changed it. Okay, so that being said, I think just to add to the June, and we have some time that we need to put ESCR in there. I don't know when. Please send me an email. I'm going to ask everybody, please send me emails with your June agenda items.
Okay.
Linda, you have your hand up. Is that a leftover from our previous conversation, or do you have a question for Trevor?
Made me think that if Seward Park, we're working very hard to try to get Seward Park opened. And so far we're hitting a blank wall. So if that's still an issue, it wouldn't hurt to mention it.
All right, so I'm going to put that on the agenda with the assumption, or ask it to be put on the agenda with the assumption that it might be resolved by that time.
Right.
Anybody else have a question for Trevor?
Okay.
All right.
No task force. Task force. NYCHA, no. Arts and cultural, no.
Well,
Chinatown neighborhood, no.
Nobody met.
Okay.
Nobody met. Any other old business? Any old business?
Can I just say
Any new business?
we also sent out the letter against SYEP cuts.
Okay.
Yes, the letter for SYP cuts went out. Thank you, May, for working on that. Any new business? Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn so we can go into the next meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor? Good night. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, don't go anywhere.
Hold on. I'm going to stop recording.
Wait, sorry,
Hold on.
I didn't catch the.
Oh, it was me and seconded by Eric Diaz.